This room belongs to the beautiful Arlena Stewart, Marshal. I say, old man, are we looking for anything in particular in here?
We are indeed Hastings. We look for that which is not here.
Oh, that's a big help.
Arlena Marshal's most delightful and expensive perfume. It is the same as that which we found in the cave.
Looks like ordinary bath salts. Poirot, open the lid.
I cannot, Hastings. The lid, it is screwed on most tightly.
There are red hairs caught in the bristles. No mistaking that color. This looks important. I will keep it in my notebook. I'll just put this in my notebook.
Forgive the intrusion, Captain Marshal. My condolences. Forgive me, but I must impose upon you.
Carry on.
Poirot, I just saw a shadow by the balcony door. I think someone is out there listening.
Ah, well, we will let them listen, I think. Mrs. Marshall was your second wife?
Yes,
You have been married how long?
just over 2 years.
The marriage? It was a happy one?
Certainly.
Have you any idea who might have killed your wife?
None whatever.
Had she any enemies?
Possibly.
I say.
Oh?
Don't misunderstand me. Arlena was an actress. She was also a good-looking woman. She aroused a certain amount of jealousy, envy, hatred, malice.
From men as well as women?
Mostly women.
Was Mrs. Marshall previously acquainted with anyone in this hotel?
I believe she had met Mr. Redfern before, at some cocktail party.
How did you spend your time this morning?
I breakfasted downstairs at 10 minutes after 9 o'clock. After that, I went down to the bathing beach where I saw you. I had a quick bathe. Let me see. At about 20 minutes to 11, I returned here to type some letters. I typed until 10 minutes to 12. I then changed into tennis kit as I had a date to play tennis at 12.
Who else played the tennis?
Mrs. Redfern, Miss Darnley, and Mr. Gardner. I went down at 12 o'clock. Miss Darnley was there. Mr. Gardner and Mrs. Redfern arrived a few minutes later. We played for about an hour. Just as we came into the hotel afterwards, I got the news.
When was the last time you saw your wife?
9 o'clock. She was in her room opening her letters.
What was her manner? Unusual at all?
No, perfectly normal.
Did she mention at all what were the contents of the letters?
No.
You did not, pardon me, object to your wife's friendship with Monsieur Redfern?
I wasn't in the habit of criticizing my wife's conduct.
You did not protest or object in any way?
Certainly not.
Packet of lies. We overheard them arguing.
You will not deny then that Monsieur Redfern admired your wife?
He probably did. Most men did. She was a very beautiful woman.
You were persuaded there was nothing personal in the affair?
I never thought about it.
Utter rot.
Did your wife leave a will?
You know, I'm not sure.
Her solicitors?
Barkett and Applegood, Bedford Square. They handled all of her business affairs.
Was she well off?
Well, yes, her career was very successful, as I've told you. I would expect she was worth in the neighborhood of £50,000.
Then you would call your wife a rich woman?
I'll say.
I suppose she was, really. See here, Poirot. Aren't you getting a good way from the essentials of this business? What I believe or don't believe is surely not relevant to the plain fact of murder.
You do not comprehend, Captain Marshall. There is no such thing as the plain fact of murder. Murder springs 9 times out of 10 out of the character and circumstances of the murdered person. Because the victim was the kind of person he or she was, therefore, was he or she murdered. Until we can comprehend fully and completely exactly what kind of person Arlena Marshall was, we shall not be able to see clearly exactly the kind of person who murdered her.
Was there anything else?
Not at present, thank you.
Feel free to nose around all you like. I need some air.
I'd certainly like to see what Miss Marshall has stashed in there.
Then the combination to the box, it must be found. Trial and error will not open it.
That's a rather nasty-looking stick pin. More green fabric. From the ashes, it looks like quite a bit was burned here. Linda's watch. It agrees with yours exactly, Poirot.
Therefore the watch, it is correct to the second. May I put to you some questions, mademoiselle?
Of course, I'll do anything I can to help.
Could you please tell me of your movements this morning?
I had breakfast shortly after 9, say 10 past. Then I collected my book, spoke with you in the lobby briefly, and went to read at the Ledgers. That must have been about 25 past 10. I came back to the hotel about 10 minutes to 12, got my tennis racket and played until about 1.
From about 10:30 until 20 minutes of 12, you were at the Ledges and never left there during that time?
Not entirely. At about 11, I went back to my room to fetch my sun hat. I saw Kenneth Marshall typing in his room.
Indeed? From the hall, perhaps? Or the balcony?
The hall. His door was slightly ajar.
Did you see Madame Marshall this morning?
No.
You did not see her as she paddled her float round to Cutter's Cove?
No, she must have gone before I got there.
Did you see anyone at all on a float or in a boat?
At the Ledgers? Possibly Mr. Blatt. At least I think it was his boat. It had a white sail, though.
You didn't see Monsieur Redfern and Mademoiselle Brewster when they rode past?
No, I don't think I did. You see, I was reading, only glancing up occasionally.
Did anyone pass you on the path?
I was on the lower ledge. Unless someone had called out to me, I doubt I would have noticed them.
You were, I think, acquainted with Captain Marshall?
He is an old family friend. We grew up next door to one another, although I had not seen him for a good many years. It must be nearly 12.
Were the Marshalls on good terms with one another?
On perfectly good terms, I should say.
Monsieur Marshall, he was very devoted to his wife?
Ken, Mr. Marshall is rather old-fashioned. He hasn't got the modern habit of shouting matrimonial woes upon the housetop.
Did you like Madame Marshall?
No.
Why was that?
She was bored to death with women and showed it. On the other hand, men were a very different story.
Do you think her husband was aware of her interests in that line?
I think that he accepted his wife quite frankly for what she was. He had no illusions about her. But I could be wrong.
Do you know of anyone with a grudge against Madame Marshall?
Only wives. But since she was strangled, I presume that it was a man who killed her.
Mademoiselle, may I ask a favor of you?
You found my typewriter, Monsieur Poirot. I am in your debt.
What would you have me ask, Hastings?
Could you compare some pieces of fabric for me?
I would be happy to. Fabric is something I know quite a bit about.
Merci. The perfect favor to ask. You are learning to exercise their little grey cells with great skill. It would seem the obvious request.
This cut piece is fine silk. From a lady's hat, I would say. The torn bit is rayon, inexpertly dyed. And this burnt piece is from the same rayon as the torn fabric.
Many thanks, mademoiselle. I thank you for your cooperation.
A rather touching photograph. Mrs. Redfern's sketching supplies.
You were right, Monsieur Poirot, weren't you?
Madame?
You asked me to have patience, and now Arlena has been removed from the picture.
Perhaps. But the manner of her removal is not something to celebrate, I think.
Oh, I'm not celebrating, I'm not that callous. But I do know that eventually that door will open, and it will be my husband standing there.
If you could give me an account of your movements this morning?
Of course. Let me see. On my way down to breakfast, I stopped in to see Linda Marshall and fixed up with her to go to Sanctuary Cove. That was about 9:40. After breakfast, I saw you in the lobby. I sketched that man for you at about 10:20.
Again, my thanks.
Then Linda and I set out for Sanctuary Cove.
What time was that?
I think it was just on 10:30.
What did you do at Sanctuary Cove?
I made some sketches of the birds, while Linda swam and sunbathed. Have you seen them walk, Monsieur Poirot? It quite reminded me.
Ha!
We will not dwell upon the birds, madame, if you don't mind.
As you wish.
What time did you leave?
At 11:45. I was playing tennis at 12 with Miss Darnley, Mr. Marshall and Mr. Gardner.
How did you know the time?
Linda had a watch. I asked her.
I see. And then?
I packed up my sketching things and went back to the hotel.
What was Mademoiselle Linda doing when you left the beach?
Oh, Linda went into the sea again.
Did Linda Marshall actually enter the sea before you left the beach?
Yes. Oh, yes, she ran down the beach. I heard her splashing in the waves as I climbed the path.
What happened after you went back to the hotel?
I changed into my tennis things and went to the tennis court where I met the others. We played 2 sets and were just going in when the news came about Mrs. Marshall.
How did you feel when you learned of Madame Marshall?
It was a horrible thing to happen.
Yes, but you were so very surprised?
I think I see what you mean. No, I was not perhaps surprised. Shocked, yes. But she was the kind of woman.
She was the kind of woman to whom such a thing might happen. Yes, madame. That is the truest and most significant thing that has been said to Poirot today.
This may be important. I'll keep it in my notebook.
Believe me when I tell you, Hastings, there was nothing.
This document bears further study. I will keep it in my notebook.
Believe me when...
Interesting. I'll put it in my notebook. This room belongs to Mr. Blatt.
Well, would you look at that?
I say, what caused that oily spot?
My nose tells me it is some kind of oil. A test would determine it more precisely.
I say,
My nose... They are blackout curtains, although at the moment they are not drawn. Mademoiselle?
Mr. Poirot, you gave me such a start. I'm all nerves.
Is all well, mademoiselle?
What were you doing in your bath yesterday? It was such a mess. It took forever to clean it up.
It is a little hard to explain that...
Well, never you mind. I took care of it. It's my job.
How are things between you and Monsieur Will Jenks?
Mr. Poirot, the Marshall girl told me that there is nothing between her and my will. Everything's patched up.
I am so glad.
She also told me that you had a hand in clearing up that mystery. If you need a helping hand in this horrible murder case, you just let me know.
Do not disturb him, Hastings. We may be able to take advantage of his absence from the beach. What? I must speak with you.
Sir, Colonel Weston says I should answer any questions you might have. Murder. Isn't it horrible?
It is indeed. What can you tell me about the murder?
Nothing. Nothing at all. I had to go rake that tennis court again this morning. I was there from 10:30 until several of the guests turned up to play around 12. Can you believe somebody had been digging it up?
Oh, that is terrible. I am sorry you were put to so much trouble.
Oh, that's all right. It's not as if you did it.
This is a washout. He knows nothing.
He can still be useful, Hastings. See if you can find out how. Do you know anything of fifth columnists operating along this coast?
Fifth columnists? You mean spies? Traitors? No.
No? But then he would not be likely to. Try again, Hastings. I saw Tom Cutter's ghost last night.
You did? Now folk will believe me. They thought it was just the liquid courage making me see things.
Now, is this useful, may I ask? You told me you will be the Navy frogman soon.
Yes, sir. I hope this murder doesn't hold things up.
You can swim deep as well as fast?
I should hope so.
Mademoiselle Brewster tells me something was thrown into the rocky bath. Do you think you could swim down and find it?
I suppose I could under ordinary circumstances, but this murder has right unmanned me. If I had something that would brace me up, that might do it. Liquid courage, if you catch my meaning.
Hastings, Hastings, Hastings? Have you learned nothing from Poirot? At least now we know the service George can perform for us. We lack only the means to enlist his aid. Merci, Monsieur George. I will speak with you again.
You know where to find me, sir.
Hello, Monsieur Poirot. I'm sorry. I know I should have stayed at the hotel, but I had to get away.
It is of no matter, mademoiselle. I knew I should find you here. May I ask the questions?
Yes.
Can you tell me how you spent the morning?
After breakfast, I came here to Sanctuary Cove with Christine, Mrs. Redfern.
When was that?
We started off from my room just before the half hour, 10:25.
What did you do when you got here?
I swam, then sunbathed, while Christine sketched the gully moors. Then later I went back in for a bathe, and Christine went back to the hotel to get changed for tennis.
Did you like your stepmother, mademoiselle?
Oh yes, Arlena was kind to me.
Did your father and your stepmother ever quarrel?
Oh no, Father doesn't quarrel with people. He's not like that at all.
Have you any idea who might have wanted to kill your stepmother?
Well, I hate to say it, but Mrs. Redfern might want to. Her husband was in love with Arlena after all. Not that I think she would really want to kill her. I mean, she'd just feel that she wished she was dead. Monsieur Poirot, that isn't the same thing at all, is it?
No, it is not at all the same. What time was it that Mrs. Redfern left you?
11:45.
Are you sure of that time?
Oh yes, she asked me. She didn't want to miss her tennis game. I looked at my watch. It was 11:45. It keeps very good time. I know I can't show you now. I left it in my room when I changed after bathing.
When did you return to the hotel?
Just about 1 o'clock. And then I heard about Arlena.
You filled a prescription for your stepmother today?
What? Oh, yes. Yes, I did. Just a while ago. Trinol.
And where is the Trianol now?
I put it in her room. There are evil people in the world. They need to be punished. But Mrs. Redfern isn't evil. I don't want her to get into trouble. She loves her husband, that's all. Don't you think?
I think she loves him very much. Oui, mademoiselle.
Look here, Poirot. There are quite a few more things we should be asking her. She clearly wasn't telling the truth about her feelings for Arlena, or about her father and Arlena never fighting.
Hastings, that is a very troubled child. I think it would be very unwise to press her. Besides, there is still more we need to discover about the events at Miss Potter's school for the young lady.